All right, good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. Real quick rundown of the day. The Unit 3 update, I'm actually going to table and do after we do the modulation stuff so that more people are here so they can all hear this. We're going to do some rhythm sight reading, which we really haven't done yet this semester. It's a fun little skill to practice. And then we'll do an overview of our immediate modulations. So I did mention in class on Tuesday that I would bring in today an example of that flat six deceptive cadence turning into a modulation that occurs in like real life music. So I'm going to play an excerpt for you. So a little background. This is from Schubert's A minor string quartet. And so the first movement is in sonata form. The primary theme is in A minor. The secondary theme is in C major. So the segment that you're about to hear is the end of the secondary theme. So we're coming towards the end of the exposition. And you are going to hear that there's an evaded cadence. And then you're going to hear a deceptive cadence to flat six, and then hear how that sort of spins out into an actual modulation to A flat major. So we're going to listen to it a couple times before I task you with anything. So here you go. Okay, so that's all you need. So let's go ahead and listen again. All right, this time as you listen, I'm going to kind of annotate the phrases a little bit above the recording. And I'd also like you to the best of your ability, try and pin down some scale degree numbers to the first violin, especially at the cadence points. So here's your predominant, cadential, evaded cadence. Predominant, cadential progression. And there is our deceptive cadence that then continues on in that key. So last time I'm going to play this, and this time let's see if we can get the scale degrees for the first violin at the cadence points. The rest of it's kind of unwieldy. Okay, so I sang one of them and then I remembered that I'm on a delay, so it was probably really annoying to you. But so we get to the predominant. We have our cadential progression. First violin is on 3, so cadential 6/4, 5/7. First violin 3, 2, and then that evaded cadence. And we do the whole thing again. We get to that predominant, cadential progression again. 3, 2. Sorry, 3, 2. And then we go here. So the first violin never changes what it's doing. It's still E, D, C, which is 3, 2, 1 in C, but it becomes 3, 2, and then we go here, 3, 2, 1, 5. So the first violin maintains the 3, 2, 1 progression that we're expecting over that cadential dominant to tonic, even with the deceptive cadence. So the 3, 2, 1 stays, and all that happens is that 1 then turns into 3 in the new key. So that's an example of that modulation kind of taking hold via a deceptive cadence. And it gives you a sense of sort of what it sounds like, how the sound kind of warms up when we take that path towards the immediate modulation. Okay, so let's backtrack now. That was item 2 on the to-do list of the day. Item 1, Unit 3 update. The reason we're doing this is because I cannot count. So last week, as we were, I might have even said something in class as I was giving you information about the due date for the rhythm canon. I was thinking to myself, like, this unit's really long. We have a lot of time. We have a lot of time because I read the calendar incorrectly. So the unit was supposed to end next week and not the week after. It's even in the syllabus. So if any professor ever gives you crap for not reading the syllabus, you can just cite this as an example of a faculty member not reading the syllabus that she literally wrote. I am not going to change the due date back because that's unfair, even though 99% of you are going to do this stuff in the last 6 hours anyways. But the due date remains November 5th. And the final revision due date is November 8th. But I would strongly suggest that you try and kind of mentally adhere to the due date of next week, only because Unit 4 is still going to happen. And you're going to have stuff to do for Unit 4 before you leave for Thanksgiving. And just judging by the looks of sheer exhaustion and kind of soulless shells of bodies in a lot of the videos I saw for Unit 2, my suggestion would be get that stuff in if you can. It obviously is my mistake having the wrong due date in the first place, but if you can kind of shuttle that stuff. So the suggested due dates I've been giving you actually will have you turning everything in by the due date of next week. So the suggested due dates for the first 3 items put you to next Thursday. And the last thing is just the quiz. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to send an email out to everyone today just clarifying that. But so this is why when people are like, oh, you work from home now, it must be so nice. You must have so much time and be so relaxed. I'm like, ma'am, I can't even read a calendar anymore. We're all in scramble mode. So my apologies. But do what you can. You can take the extra week if you want to, if you need it. But do know that we are going to start Unit 4 on November 3rd. So we will start with sonata form is kind of the big thing with Unit 4. So we'll start with that on November 3rd regardless. And know that you'll have your Unit 4 stuff due before you leave for break. Okay, so on tap for today, we're going to do some rhythm sight reading. This is a super fun skill to practice. We don't get to do it much, and sight reading is tough no matter what way you slice it in terms of pedagogy. It's difficult to do in a classroom setting because you can always latch on to the person who is really strong and kind of follow them, even maybe without even realizing it. And it's hard to do when we are not in the same physical space because we can't hear each other, and that creates its own set of problems. But we're going to do what we can. So let's take a look at this green line. We're going to take a few minutes, look it over, and then attempt some sight reads through it. Before I send you off to do that, though, you may or may not recognize this rhythmic pattern. We haven't explicitly, I don't think, seen it this semester, but you do know what's going on even if you don't realize it. So when we talked about quarter note triplets early on in this unit, we talked about how quarter note triplets are really just derived from a strand of eighth note triplets that have been parsed out into pairs. And that's how we come into the quarter note triplet. These half note triplets, it's the same exact premise, only the value has just been doubled again. So if you can imagine a stream of quarter note triplets doing the same exact thing. So we've got quarter note triplets that we are going to pair off. And that will give you that half note triplet rhythm. Now, we get a nice kind of lead in. So you actually articulate the quarter note triplets in the 2 beats preceding it. So you'll have it in your mind and in your ear and in your body, and then you can take that and just use that pulse stream to formulate the half note triplets. So that's challenge numero uno with this one. The second challenge is just reorienting your brain over this bar line to go from you've just had 3 measures of triple everything to going back to thinking in duple and thinking in 16th notes. So that dotted 8th, 16th is going to accidentally be a tied triplet if you're not really careful. So I'll shut up now and take a minute or two and look through that green line, and then we will attack it as a group. Okay, let's conduct in 4 and speak and see how you go. We'll take the tempo nice and easy to start. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta, 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 ta. Okay. Find spots that were crunchy. If it was measure 3, you've got a minute to work that out. If it was measure 4, take a second to work that out, or work 3 and 4 to get that transition. So 1 minute on your own to drill whatever didn't go great. Okay, let's try it again. Bring the tempo up just a smidgen. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta, 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 ta. All right. I actually think, and you can agree or disagree, but I think these are all easier, faster. I think that you can kind of feel the whole measure as a holistic blob that you subdivide when it's a little faster. When it gets really slow, you've got to rely so much on your internal subdivision that it can start to just feel awkward. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the purple one. The purple one is basically the green line, just a little spicier. So we have kept measure 4 exactly the same. Measures 1 and 2 are almost the same. We've just added some interest in the first 2 beats. And what that does, so in the green rhythm line, you were coming into those triples every time from just plain old quarter notes. That gives you a great opportunity to subdivide in your head while you're on the quarter note. Here, we are now approaching the triple subdivisions with very clear duple and 16th note subdivisions. So you've got to be able to kind of stop on a dime and turn it around. So a little more challenging. Really quickly, if this double dot notation is concerning for you, Durational dots always do the same thing. They add half of the note value that they're attached to. So with a double dot, you've got your quarter note. The first dot, you add a half a beat to it. The second dot, you add half of that. So then you add a quarter to it. So that gives you 1/4 plus an eighth plus a 16th for the duration of that first beat. Another really easy way to look at it is to just see what's left over. And what was left over was a 16th note. So as you're holding that, then be thinking your 1E and A's from the get-go, 1E and a 2E and a, so that you can find that last 16th note accurately. Okay, give it a look, and then we'll take it on as a group in a minute. Okay, and before we start, just last thing. So the attack point of these two things is exactly the same, right? All I've done in that third triplet half note is just divide it in half. So this will sound just like this. Okay, let's try it. 1, 2, 3, E and a 4. Ta, 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 ta. Ta 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 ta. Again, that transition to measure 4 can be a little tricky. So 30 seconds. Look it over one more time, and we'll take it on one last run. Okay, let's give it one more go. 1, 2, 3, E and a 4. Ta 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 ta. All right, fine. So that was a little more time than we normally spend on just regular rhythm, but a fun skill to practice, and with that, without having to worry about like your hands and your tying, which is what we've been doing for the past couple of days. It really just gets you to focus on subdividing really cleanly and making your conducting clean. Okay, so the last thing that we have on tap for today is really just an overview of our modulation. So looking ahead towards the quiz itself, if you remember from Unit 1, the quiz asked you to identify key areas. So we started in Major 1 and then we ended in Major 3, something like that. The quiz for Unit 3 is going to be a little bit more specific. I'm going to be asking you to actually identify techniques. So what modulation technique did we use? What happened in chord 5? So a little bit more specific, and a great way to navigate that is just knowing what your options are. So we've spent the entire semester on mediant modulations. So now I just figured today would be a good opportunity to kind of get them all down in a list so that you have an idea of A, all the stuff that we've done this semester and all the things that you have kind of accomplished over the past 8 weeks, and B, to have a sort of option bank for when you do tackle the quiz. So our first modulation technique is the one that we already knew from Skills in Theory 3, and that was just a diatonic pivot chord. And we saw this really mostly like going from major 1 to minor 3 because there are a lot of shared harmonies there, or going minor 1 to major flat 3, obviously tons of shared harmonies there, major 1 to minor 6. So really exploiting the shared collection of pitches between those more closely related mediant keys. And then there was one very specific diatonic pivot that I did want to highlight because we see it and hear it a lot. And that is when we go from a major key and we use its tonic triad to turn into the 6th chord in a minor key. And we spent a lot of time singing through those specific modulations. So it's a very smooth modulation that brings us from a major key to a minor key. Number 3, and this is my love to hate methodology of modulating because it sounds so like kind of clunky and awkward, but also very, it's very ear catching. But that is to just throw a secondary dominant down and just use that. So no preparation, just here's a 5, your new key, and off we go. And the reason I say that that I love to hate it is because the lack of preparation can either make it seem really awkward, or it can just be one of those moments where you're like, ooh, cool chord. And then you move off into the new key. And I played one of these like super early on in this semester, but just as an example, and again, I'm going to do this in as clunky a way as possible. Here's a 1, 4, 5, 7, 1. Here's your new dominant. 5, 7, a major 3 to 3. So there's no like real finesse going on there. You just throw in the 5 of and off you go. But still a valid modulation technique. All right, and now looking at what we've done kind of more recently. The big one that we started this unit with was reinterpreting the 7/7. So that is probably one of the more challenging ones to sing. And we talked about how this reinterpretation opens up this like trapdoor portal to so many different key areas because of the nature of the 7/7, how it's constructed, how it can be exploited to go different places. So that 7/7 reinterpretation is a really, really useful method to get into new mediant related keys. And then even more recently, we use the German 6. And I'm going to kind of even further delineate between different ways that we could use that German 6. So the progression that you'll actually sing for me for the Unit 3 stuff uses the 5/7 of the key and uses the German 6 of the key to turn to the 5/7 of the new key. So that is one way that we'll see, which is just regular 5/7 being reinterpreted as a German 6 in one way or the other. But most commonly, kind of in the wild, we instead see the 5/7 of 4. And we sang through that a few times. I think it was last week. Using that 5/7 of 4 to turn it into a German 6. And just as a kind of refresher then, that 5/7 of 4, from a numbers perspective, because you are going to have to identify these without a score. So you've got to figure out what's going on in the bass. That 5/7 of 4 is off of scale degree 3, or scale degree 1, sorry. So your scale degree is 1, 3, 5, and flat 7. So as you're listening to a bass line for that, it's going to be really helpful for you if you know that that 5/7 of 4 is based off of and rooted in scale degree 1. Okay, and last but not least is what we just listened to today, and that was taking that flat 6 deceptive cadence and turning it into a modulation. And we just spent time at the beginning of class today kind of listening to that and getting a sense of how it feels and what it sounds like and what scale degree transformation we're dealing with. I think that is also a really important thing to note. So, like in number 2, scale degree 1 becomes scale degree 6. In this flat 6 deceptive cadence, we saw how scale degree 1 in our original key became scale degree 3 in our new key. So understanding the scale degree transformations can also be really helpful. So with that then, that was a lot of talking. But on Tuesday, I'm going to come bearing a plethora of examples. Some will be manufactured chord progressions, some will be music from real life. And we are just going to spend some time with that music trying to nail down the modulations themselves. Not only the key areas that we're going to, but also how we got from key X to key Y. That will be one of our big kind of goals for Tuesday's class. All right, so if you have questions about the Unit 3 kerfluffle, feel free to stay after and ask me. A lot of you have just been kind of rolling with the deadlines that I gave anyways, so you're in fine shape to just be done by the end of next week regardless. But if you do have questions or concerns, please stay after class and let me know. Otherwise, I'm just gonna take the L on that one, and we'll continue moving forward. Like I said, the deadlines that I've been giving you still stand, so it's still November 5th for revisions, November 5th for everything, November 8th for revisions. But push it forward a week if you can, knowing that we are going to still start Unit 4 on November 3rd, and you will have Unit 4 stuff due before you leave for Thanksgiving. All right. Thank you guys for your time. And it's Thursday, so have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you guys next week.